Hi, everybody. David Donaldson here with another episode of Entrepreneurial Impact with my associate, Joe Martin. And we are excited. We are emphatically excited to bring you One Residential with Erin K. Jones and Josh Dukes. And notice one is capital letters. So that it's emphatic. We would have jumped that out.
That is true.
Just I want to make sure.
It looks better that way. I don't know.
It does. Whoever thought of that, genius. Absolute genius.
That's a whole story.
Now, we're excited to have this conversation today on a couple of things. We're heading into October, which is our business planning clinic month, right? For those of you that are in our world and within our organization, or any, I guess, you got to think ahead to the following year. But before we get to the meat and potatoes of, hey, how do we wrap our minds around setting goals and building budgets and planning for the following year, you guys went through like a blossoming caterpillar and a massive change this year. And I wanted to kind of start our conversation around that because there's planning that goes through a merger, right? So you guys took Erin K. Jones and Waz Dukes and became One Residential. So when we jump into that, let's kind of give everybody, Erin, I'll kind of start with you. Give everybody a little bit of background. Like what were you doing before, right? What brought you to say, hey, Josh is the guy that I want to be in business with, right? And then we'll kind of peel that back and understand that experience.
Yeah, so I ran a team. I started my team in 2016. Lucky enough to still have all my original agents I started with now. And
Hold on. You started in 16 and you still have all your same agents?
I have the first 5 I hired, yeah.
I want everybody to hear that because you kind of glossed over that. That's 8 years ago. That's massive.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, they all came on in the first 2 or 3 years, but yeah, I still have the original people. And most of, I think our retention rate's probably the thing we're most proud of at this point. Yeah. But, so I started my team in 2016. I started selling real estate in 2012. I had started with another company, came to KW in 2013. And, I did join another team briefly, which was a good and bad experience. I learned a lot, but it wasn't a great fit for me. And then I actually became the PC coach in 2016 as well. I was approached by the Market Center leadership and they said, basically, if you don't do this, people will leave. Because I popped around the office and helped people and that's just who I was. So I did that for about 6 months and I realized 6 months in, I can't do this. I can't run a big business. And then I was the top individual agent at the time. And then I can't do this by myself, basically. And so this guy, Josh, was hanging around the office. We both worked late at night. I was like, hey, you're going to help me. And I knew who he was. And we had started a little mastermind group with a couple other agents. We were meeting Thursdays at lunch. So I had gotten to know him a little bit. So we started co-running the PC program at the Alexandria office. I think 2017 you came and helped me. And that mastermind group we started also just kind of dwindled to just Josh and I. So, we started with about 8 people and then week by week, people just stopped showing up. They don't care or whatever. And ended up being that Josh and I met every week and we still do meet every week to this day. So it was just kind of helped each other. At the time, I didn't realize how new he was. He became a PC coach in his second year of business, which was kind of crazy, and nobody really knew that at the time. So yeah,
that was our secret.
That's right. Nobody listens anyway. Nobody's going to hear this. That's okay.
He carried himself very well and acted like he knew what he was doing. But anyway, so that's what I was doing. We already ran a business together, so I'll let Josh talk about himself.
All right. So Josh, yours is also interesting because you were in a merger relationship, business partnership, right? Before coming to this one, you've kind of gone down this road too. So let's hear about your journey.
Yeah, real quick, I was in the Army and I was trying to figure out what I was going to do. Thought I was going to go to State Department, which is a normal track that folks in my line of work, which I was a drum major in a special band, normally would take. And our real estate agents, also our life coaches, kind of mentors, they were going to be retiring and they wanted to bring somebody in and mentor them and let us, not take over, but help them go in the direction of, retiring eventually. So brought us in. When I say us, that's myself and my wife, Judy. And, we just started this ball rolling downhill. My background is I was a drum major leader in the Army. So I was like, why should we do this by ourselves? We should do it with a group of people. And so went to every training I possibly could in Keller Williams, ran into Erin, and, we just started masterminding about how could we build something bigger than ourselves. And so that's how it started. And with, the mentorship of the Wazes and our collaboration back and forth, we ended up building up WazDukes to about 15 agents and 4 support staff. And it kind of blew up into what it did until we decided to do this crazy thing called One.
So, but the truth be told, that was roughly 6 to 8 years in the making.
Yeah.
It was. Yeah. And, sometimes things just feel right. And it always felt right? We just didn't know the right time of it. But in our back of our minds, we always knew we probably would end up this way.
And this became the one. Got it.
Yes.
Oh.
Yeah, there's so many things.
Like that dad joke? There you go.
That was good.
Yeah. I don't know if you know, my eyes have been watering the whole time. I'm not crying, but
It's all right, Josh. You can be the sentimental one. We'll let you
bring that out of people, Josh.
Yeah, you don't see the. I have a bunch of onions underneath my monitor right now, but just so I can cry on.
I got a question for you. Right. So you had individual success. You had all kinds of journeys, and we'll call those successes and learning opportunities until you got to who you are today to figure out the one path forward. And I always look at why do people change environments or ecosystems, and it's that there's something that you're looking to attain and that in the current environment you're not able to get there. So if you take like Erin's world and Josh's world, you pull them together, you get a bigger ecosystem. So like before you get into like the merger and all the tactical stuff, I think it's important to have like a North Star of like, what was the vision that you each individually had that by coming together created this ecosystem that you couldn't have done siloed. And I think it actually goes back to Josh's point about like, if you're trying to build something big from, your background, is that you got to go get other people along that journey. So I'd really be interested to hear like your all's take on what was it in the vision to create that massive universe that was substantially larger than you could do individually.
So the first thing I'll say is that we started our teams because it wasn't all about us. We actually wanted to succeed through others, and it's really important for us to employ people. I mean, we have a really big admin staff now. It's important for us to see other people succeed, and we really learned our passion for that in the PC program, but realized that we wanted to really handpick who we wanted to be in business with, and that's where we really built out our teams. And I think at the time when you're a little bit more naive, you're like, okay, my name. Everyone knows my name. My clients are called my name. Let's put my name on it. And, obviously Josh kind of did the same thing with the Wazes and his last name. And we realized at one point that it's not about us. And we don't want to send our agents on appointments and the seller's saying, well, where's Erin or where's Mr. Dukes or whatever. So we really felt passionate about stripping us out of it because we try not to be, egotistical. It's not about us. It's not our business. It's a platform for our agents to be successful. So that was the first really important thing to us as we were figuring out what we were going to do. And we're both very growth minded, what's next. And this obviously, like Josh said, felt like a really natural step. And so, yeah, I think rebranding was probably one of the impetus that a core belief that we both had, that we want to create a place where people can grow within our ecosystem without being, they can take ownership of the brand just like we can.
That's a huge first step. Now we're either one. We're either you pro. We're either you pro or con against the name, like we're married to it, or is it just like, yeah, we both get it that the branding of the organization versus the branding of the individual is the way to go?
It took a long time for us to be okay stripping our name. We knew that we had to do it, but I think we were definitely like, what is the public gonna think? Like we thought through that for a couple years, I think, honestly.
Let me ask you this question, right? So I guess you could go into like, you're both were making money, right? So siloed wise, like, hey, you got a platform, a different challenge, a different leadership thing, you can grow people. And I'm asking this question mainly because like I've known you all for a pretty long time, and so and when you get into rainmaker status, and you get to the size that you all are at, it just there's a very small group of people that like understand it. And when you're sitting there, and I go back to this idea of like survive to thrive, is that if you're talking about all these big things and you're just trying to pay your mortgage and put food on the table, the idea of thriving to where you all are at is kind of like lost in the clouds. And once you get to a certain income stream, a certain stability, you can start thinking about thriving. So for you all to take individual teams that were like, hey, I'm making money, you're making money, like we've got a pretty good life here, we've got good clients, we've got great people we work with, and for us to move into one massive platform to help people grow, what is it that you all gained by doing so that's not financially driven?
I mean, I think I can speak for both of us. We get excited about a challenge, okay? And anything that is not easy, even though it might be a little scary, like you can see it on my face, like it does excite us. And the norm is not, the status quo is not our thing, okay? And if we're not working on something, and you actually, I think we can all agree on this. Like if you're not working on something, if you're either thriving, right, or you're either growing or you're diminishing, there's no floating. And I don't think we have that in our DNA. Our DNA is like we're consistently putting the Lincoln Logs or the building blocks or the Legos on top of each other, figuring out, stepping back, looking at how it works, then coming back to it, messing with it again. And I just think that we're wired to continually move forward, even if it's tough, even if we take a step back. And together, we push each other. So I think that the huge impetus for us to continue to do this is that mentally it makes us strong, and it builds us, and it fuels us on a daily basis.
Yeah, it's kind of cool. I could see you light up when you're having that conversation.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah. It might be these lights though too.
The other thing is that we built these teams out to work with people, but then on our level, and I mean, Josh did have his business partners, the Lawses, but they have, they're retiring and things like that. So we build out these teams and we're working with others, but we didn't have someone at our level to work with, right? So leadership is lonely, right? And so when you are in that position, you're craving, the accountability, you're craving the, kind of masterminding together and making decisions and things like that. And so when you're running your own team, you're really by yourself in that, right? So I think that's something else that brought us to this point as well.
So when you get to the point where you say, okay, we're going to do this, and it sounds like it wasn't like you guys went and had coffee, right? And it's like, hey, it would be great if we partnered together, which unfortunately we see way too much of, right?
Actually took a week-long vacation.
A week-long vacation.
Which Josh didn't know about, but yeah.
We'll get to that.
What was that process, or was there an individual moment that said, you know what, this is going to happen. We're going to make this happen. And to where the lights all aligned and said, okay, we're kind of cresting in our conversations of somewhat deliberateness and how we get along and what we want, and our goals are starting to align in our vision. But what was the moment that said, we got to do this together? We're doing this together.
I'm not joking. It was 3:30 in the morning in the middle of the ocean on a cruise ship doing a shot of tequila, and we shook hands and said, we're going to do it.
Wow.
It's a true story.
Brokered by my best friend and her husband, Dan. He literally sat in between us and was like, are you guys going to do this or not?
It may not.
Like literally.
Well, then let's back it up then. If that was the moment and it was the tequila conference, that kind of brought you together as one. What stopped you to that point? If they knew it, what was holding you guys back?
Well, I think that, well, first off, normally, you have a conversation like, hey, should we look into this? Like, hey, let's sit down, let's have a coffee. I mean, even when we're interviewing agents or we're interviewing staff or anybody, right? Or even when you're like testing out a new friend, like, is this really my friend? You're like, hey, let's go have coffee, let's talk. We didn't really have a conversation like, hey, is this possible? In the beginning, we just started working. We just started working on things. We started leaning on each other, right? That's how the conversation started, and it went on for 5-6 years. So once it came to like, hey, should we do this? It wasn't really, should we do this, and like, what's the impetus? It was more like, are we at a comfort level where we are willing to do it because we knew it was going to happen anyway. So I don't know if there was something stopping us per se outside of just the timing of how we felt about it. Right?
Some of it, I think, like I mentioned, kind of stripping my name out of it, or, not having the branding, or, you built something yourself. You're kind of like, do I want to give that up? Or, I've done this so far and we've been successful. Why rock the boat? Like, I think I was actually probably the holdout, if you will. And it's just running all these scenarios in your head, right? And also, like, we watched other teams kind of get, hey, oh, they're too big, or this. And, you hear people say things all the time, and you don't want to be the one that people are talking about in a negative way. So it's like, why are we throwing ourselves into the lion's den, right? Like, why are we taking this risk? But I mean, at the core of us, we are risk takers. We are collaborators. So at the end of the day, it made sense. I remember my sister's the team leader of the Arlington office. And I remember, 2019 maybe, that we were at a gathering and we were joking around about it. And she looked at Josh and she said, when your production matches hers, then you can talk about it. And to be honest, we weren't that far off. And Josh, actually, I'm really proud of him because I had more time in the game and I built my team and got there, but he got there at the same time I did, really. Like, we matched production in COVID years. We were doing the same numbers easily. It's so funny. Josh and I, we basically if you went back, we would each be selling the exact same amount of houses every year and almost the exact same volume. There were years that we were $500 apart in GCI.
Wow.
And it's been that way the whole time. So
what I heard to start this whole thing, 6 years, so it was 6 years of trust falls.
Yeah.
Our job, it took 6 years of trust falls, and
Yeah.
the trust falls weren't landing strong enough for Erin to make the pull the trigger. Got it. Josh, you need to be better at catching people in trust falls.
I was like,
No, well, it's funny because you guys it was good, right? Like, relationships were good.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a scariness when we talk about formalizing things, right? It changes things.
Yeah, exactly.
I respect that you guys gave it its due diligence and time.
Yeah.
And finally recognizing at 3:30 in the morning over a shot of tequila in the middle of the Atlantic that now's the time to make it happen. But I think people rush too often. And I love that you guys were systematic. And whether it was intentional or just by happenstance, you learned to trust, you learned to respect, you became each other's sounding boards. And to everybody else, it was no duh that this was going to happen. But to you guys, it was just the next step.
Yeah. No, I mean, to everyone else, that's literally correct. Like, people were like, it was about time. I mean, I don't think we got any negative feedback. Everybody else was like, yeah, duh. Like, we already know that. Like, you don't need to tell us that you merged. Like, it's obvious. Like, yeah, we didn't really get it. People that didn't know us were like, are you sure you want to go into business with someone else? But if you knew us, they're like, oh, no brainer.
yeah, exactly.
So okay, we're signing on for this. I'm sure not everything went as planned.
No.
One's eyes go up and one gets a little giggle, snicker. So let's just kind of sit there for a little bit. Let's talk about what happened next.
Okay. Well, okay. I mean, first, let's start with what we believe
Yes,
that we did
absolutely.
right. Okay. So we decided, we're like, okay, let's actually do this in a smart and methodical way, not like an entrepreneurial, like, hands up in the air, kicking things in the dark. So we made this spreadsheet of like 150 items, I believe, and it's ridiculously long. And we assigned, between our director of operations, our director of whatever is what we called her at first, but she's actually the director of of like inbound leads and marketing,
Director
not
of
marketing,
client development.
director of client development. Sorry, she's gonna get me for this when she watches that. And we also we have a strategic advisor, which is Dan, her husband. We sat down and we met twice a week for hours, and we would go through this checklist and methodically work through each item that we needed to change over, whether it be marketing suite, agent acquisition, transfer into a new building that we bought, everything. So we did that. We literally spent about 10 to 15 hours a week working through each checkbox. And so as we worked through it, we really started to realize, and we talked about this a little bit earlier this morning, Erin, is that we had two different staffs that we had to put through, or that we had to bring together, right? We had a family, we have an agent family, and we got the admin family, right? And it's two for one. So we joked about this, but when you're putting two families together, you're always like, oh, crazy Uncle Leon, how's that going to go over when they meet him? Or like Aunt Bootsy, has her things that she does, like what's going to happen? So we struggled a little bit with that, right, Erin? I mean,
my staff is actually virtual. My old staff is same. Try to take that out of it. But like a lot of the people that I had prior, like RTC is in Oklahoma. I mean, she used to live here, and then we kept her on board when she left. And I have another. Our EA, is virtual as well, and so Josh's staff worked in the office every day. And so just even our director of operations kind of learning how to manage somebody virtually, or how can we kind of, we don't like the word merge. How can we put these people together and work better? But talking about the staff, so the staff, well, that was a big key piece for us as well, because we realized that we're duplicating efforts every week. Okay, you have an onboarding manual. We do too. Why did we just create two, right? So even before we decided on the collaboration, as Josh calls it, we don't use the word merge. Even before we decided on the collaboration, our admin staff was working together on the back end, and they were doing stuff together because we just really want to be efficient, and we realize that we don't want to duplicate things. Let's just do it the same and then rebrand it to both teams, stuff like that. So our DOOs at the time would meet weekly before that. So they would do stuff and kind of help each other out. And I think, honestly, the brand and the name was one of the hardest things to figure out. We knew we wanted the word residential. We knew we wanted something simple. We couldn't figure out what that was forever. I mean, it was probably 3 months before we actually had a name. And we had exhausted all options. And it was just like, literally, we were sitting at a table and somebody's like, what about one? And then we all just kind of got quiet and we're like, huh, okay. And it was so important to us that we picked the right thing, that I think we just really took our time, and we're super happy with it now. The logo is a whole nother thing. We rolled out a logo.
Well, that didn't go well.
We rolled out a logo that we quickly retracted, and I'll just be, we're super transparent. This logo came from an AI logo generator that I was clicking through online in the middle of the night, and I was sending options to our leadership staff, like, what about this? What about this? And this, we hired someone for thousands of dollars to create a logo that just didn't go well. I'll just say that. And, it's just kind of weird how it all happened, but everyone, I think at this point, is super happy with it. We built out a 2-year plan, and I would say that we've accomplished almost everything in the 2 years in the 9 months so it's kind of crazy.
So what I heard, just to play this one back for everybody listening, Number one is hire a director of some highly important things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm gonna let you put the
For sure.
acronym on that one together. And some highly important things is the first hire. Got it. And then getting into your 2-year plan, and then a name that unifies. Because I think you're right. I think that one of the things that people don't think about with the name is like, just whatever. It's that it's signaling a transformation from like I do it to we do it,
Yeah.
and the ability to transform the positioning in someone's mind about like what are their home services experience, because it's no longer Erin or Josh. It's that it's a one residential, which I'd love to know why you picked that, because I don't want to speak because I don't actually know why, but I've got thoughts on why you picked that one, because it probably ascends more than just transacting a home.
So yeah, so there's two key things that we both believe really brought this together. Number one is the actual name. We're moving like I said before, two families together, and just the name codifies the idea, right? So we took two different teams and we made them one. Cheesy, sure, guilty, we're guilty of that, but at the same time, it makes so much sense. So the name one really was a big thing. Also, we have goals of creating 5 businesses over the next 5 years, right? And there's one place where somebody can get all these different residential services, right? So it just really plays well. We were almost like joking about how easy it is to play off of the actual name one. And along with codifying these two teams coming together as one, the other key linchpin in this whole thing was that we also bought a building, right? We bought a building. We had 2 separate offices. We brought everybody under one roof, right? And so those 2 key things really greased the skids, if you will, to get things moving forward and people to feel like they had a home from the agent side. And from the business side, we had one location that made sense.
Yeah, the building actually was interesting because that was on our 1 year, like that was like at the end of 1 year, we'll buy a building, and then it happened before we even merged, and our spouses were like, what's happening right now? Because like, we're gonna go buy a really expensive building in the middle of the worst commercial market you've ever, whatever, and they just were like, we actually had to bring our spouses here, I'm in the building now, and kind of like convince them on site that this was a good idea. And, thankfully they, I'll say allowed us to do that. But I couldn't imagine where we would be at without having a really collaborative space for our team. And it's been great.
So what I heard you say there was, and I'll steal a phrase from Joe, was that you were managed as sales agents to bring and make sure that all the decision makers were inside the room to give it the thumbs up.
Yes.
Definitely. I mean, we're very lucky that both of our spouses work in the business with us, and so we definitely lean on them for accountability too. And everyone has their own skill sets too. Like for me, I've never worked in a corporate job. I've never actually managed people. I have an art degree. I don't have a background that leans towards what I'm doing now. I was joking with our admin staff this morning because they were trying to find a light bulb. I'm like, I literally used to change light bulbs for a living. I have a degree in lighting design. So they don't want to ask the whatever. Am I the president, Josh? I think so. They don't want to ask the president. That's where my skill set is. But anyway.
Yeah, and I also think one of the unsung heroes of making this work is that we did bring on a strategic advisor, which is Dan, and he comes at it at a different angle, and that was good for us because we're in our lane, and he's a 360 thinker. We're all the exits, we're the holes in the boat where we're like, this is where we're going and we're going to make it there, and he's literally just Swiss cheesing everything. And you need somebody like that to always have all the exits, all of the things that can go wrong, and then all of the back planning and the contingency plans to make things still work.
Yeah, so Josh and I are we're like, we're going to go do this. And he's like, but how? And we're like, I don't know, but it's always worked before. So why not just try it?
Yeah.
He's like, back up a minute.
Yeah. We're running up that hill. Your shoelaces are tied. You aren't tied, you idiot. You need to tie them.
You know what is really cool about this? I appreciate that you recognize that about yourselves, and two, you were able to find the person, and the person was there already, right? And you guys, you weren't so. What's that?
It said Match.com. I mean,
Match.com. There's a plug, baby.
commercial. It'd be great.
I will make sure that I send this on for you guys.
One roof.
Joe, Match.com is going to be our first sponsor.
You know
that was
let me tell you, it was weird, okay? And you're never going to invite me back to the podcast. But when you're a PC coach and you're on Match.com, you see a lot of people you coach, and you're like, what the? Okay. We're good.
awesome. That is amazing. I can't say I've ever laughed that hard on the.
Alrighty then.
Anyway, more questions? All right.
What were we talking about? All right.
I got one final question for everybody that is tuned in. Just kind of, it's a cool journey to hear about two successful people merging their businesses for a bigger common goal. And you're going through hey, we had to merge teams, agents, strategy, how we did stuff, buildings, and you go from being the head, person in charge where you make all the decisions, and then you have to go to a collaboration approach of how you go through decision processing, which anybody that's worked in a team understands it's a lot faster when you got one person and maybe a small team. But then when you start getting into the size that you guys are at, it almost turns into a board decision to get stuff done, right? So let me ask you this one. So you guys come in as solo rainmakers of your worlds, and now you join. How have you worked through not positioning, but worked through who does what inside the organization now based on your skill sets and behaviors?
Yeah. So what we ended up doing was we divided and conquered, right? We set up that I would be on the agent side, Erin would be on the operations and systems side. Now, that plays into our skill sets 100%. Now, in the beginning, we decided that we would left seat, right seat. I don't know if that left seat, right seat. Okay. But we decided we were left seat, right seat, and we would make dual decisions going forward for the first 6 months. And after that first 6 months, then we would start to shift the responsibilities more to the agent side for me and more to the operations side for her. And then ultimately, we're now, if I remember correctly, on our checklist, 6 months in, so we're a little bit over that. Right now, we're in our own lanes, and we were joking about this earlier, where the only reason why it really worked was because we decided that we would use the "will I die on this hill" way of thinking about things. If I had an issue with something, I need to ask myself, am I willing to die on this hill over this? Okay, and if not, then I'm just going to leave it alone, even though maybe I think it's wrong or we should do something different. And we had to work through that. And we would be lying to your face right now to say that we haven't gotten in arguments. Okay? Because we definitely have. However, the reason why this still works is because we're able to have tough conversations, arguments, be up at 3 a.m. out on the porch talking about crazy stuff, super annoyed, wake up the next morning and just talk it out and be like, yeah, cool. And I think it's because we've known each other for so long, we know the intentions behind the excitement and the energy, even if it's a disagreement. You know what I mean? So that's how we've bifurcated the responsibilities, and we've been moving forward that way.
As we wrap up this episode, and you look at what you guys have done. So first, I want to give you a little context. What's the size of One Residential now?
So we have 40 agents and 12 admin staff.
Okay. Which puts you in a stratosphere of a very small percentage of real estate organizations and teams that have gotten to that level. But if you're talking to somebody that's on that trajectory or path, or somebody else that is kind of doing it like you as well, what advice looking back would you say, hey, if there's one thing that you need to know, what is that?
I'll let Erin go first.
One thing you need to know, I think, for us, I mean, don't be afraid to do it. I mean, I don't know. I wish I would. I mean, I don't know that we wish we were merged sooner or collaborated sooner. But like I held on to a lot of things that probably weren't relevant. And I think at this point, I'm shocked at what we've accomplished. I mean, we decided on this 13 months ago, and so like basically it's been a year, and I'm just shocked at where we've where we've made it. I guess we just surpassed our production from last year, which was pretty amazing. I think in this market, being ahead of the game going into the last quarter feels really good. And I think just, don't be afraid to grow, because ultimately the more lives we can impact through either agents or clients, that's really what it's about for us. And the more people we can help and help become, better versions of themselves, and also, support their lifestyle and their family, I think that's really what it's about for us. And, we don't have intentions to go to some crazy massive organization, but I think if we find talented people that we are passionate about, we bring them on board, and everyone on our team should know that we are passionate about them, and we really want to make sure that we have enough time and attention for everyone as well. So that's something we're really passionate about. And if we've brought someone into our organization, I hope they feel that we are, passionate about them and want the best for them.
Awesome.
I think that if I were to say something, I would just remind people that they didn't get to where they are now without other people. So you are standing on shoulders of giants, and we couldn't do what we do on a daily basis without the folks that we work with, and they are super important. So never forget how you got to how have you gotten, geez, I can't talk today. How have you gotten to the point that you're at? And then who are the people that helped you get there? Because it sure wasn't just
I love that.
Take your ego out of it, I think. That's the big thing.
Yeah, the humility, right? And that's kind of what I've gotten out of the two of you guys. You're incredibly humble. I know Joe touched on earlier, the humility of it all. Don't let that disappear, and maintain who you were at all times. Well, listen, everybody, thanks for joining us in this week's episode of Entrepreneurial Impact. And tune in next week as we get into how Josh and Erin tackle their first year of business planning. Tune in next week.